Angel, so glad to have you here, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to visit with you.
Yeah, so you and I met, oh my goodness, back in 2010 in Aspen, Colorado, when you were living there. I can't even remember how we connected or what. I was teaching a class out there on oils and you're just like we were Facebook friends and you were kind of on my radar and then not on my radar. And then recently, like I watch a few women that I kind of knew casually years ago, and I've seen a lot of them go through this like metamorphosis. And I mean this in the best way possible. Like you're almost unrecognizable from 2010, and we're gonna go there. I mean, I was always struck with your personality and just you have this way about you that's very natural and very kind and down to earth. But then I've just seen this like warrior person and this, fierce feminine protector of all the things that you are about, what you've learned. So let's go there. Let's talk about when things started to where you were at kind of like your comfort zone place
Mhm.
and then what started to happen with this unraveling? What were the precursors that led to this awakening for you?
Well, 2010 is a great place to pinpoint. I was at the pinnacle of my doing my way through life, seeking to achieve and accomplish and do everything right and follow all the rules that I had been given from my programming, my upbringing, from religion. And I was living in Aspen. I was a stay at home homeschooling mom of five sons. And I was trying to do everything right. I wanted so desperately to be a good wife and mom. I wanted so desperately to add to the community, to serve in my church.
Mhm.
And I tirelessly devoted myself to that. Fast forward to 2016. I had moved from Aspen to St. George, Utah, which is my hometown. So I was back home around family, doing all the same things with the boys and the homeschooling and all the service. And one day I got a phone call. There was a warrant out for my husband's arrest.
Mm.
And it came in like a wrecking ball. I had no clue. I had no suspicion. He and I were both very active members of a church. He was a clergyman. He also was employed by the church as an interpreter. And so the phone call was so shocking. And in that moment, I just felt if I can't trust him, if he's been hiding and lying to me, I just felt like there was no human being I could reach out to, but I needed some guidance in that moment. We were operating a business together. And so I needed to know right then because of our business structure. I had to either go to work and take the business. So it was like I needed an immediate answer. And I just didn't want to call anyone else. I didn't want to throw his reputation under the bus. I didn't want to call my family. I didn't want anyone to be mad at him. And I just walked into my bedroom. And the first thing I did was looked at my bookshelf, and I had just collected church material. I had scriptures, I had manuals, I had magazines, I had biographies of church leaders. And I remember this moment scanning it because normally I had been taught to search your scriptures, search, ponder, and pray when you need an answer. And I scanned it, and the thought that came was, I know this material really well, and there's not a scripture or a verse that says what to do when there's a warrant out for your husband's arrest. And that came with like kind of a chuckle, like,
Yeah.
that's so true. So I turned my back physically to the bookshelf and I paused and I thought, if I can't trust another human, and I'm not really sure who and what God is because we've been reaching and serving and I thought we were operating all in alignment with this God. And now my life was unraveling. It's called an existential crisis in psychology when everything you thought was true suddenly seems like it's shattered. So I'm standing there and seeing my life shattered like glass on the floor. That's what
Mm.
I was perceiving. And this in this moment where I paused, I was like, who do I turn to? What do I turn to? And there was this me inside, angel, just the
Mm.
pure soul. That's what I call it, is that pure soul says, you can trust me. Like, I got me. I have to turn into me. An angel has to ask for help. And in that moment, I went inward and upward. That's how I describe it later, because I learned that my whole life I had been going outward to get upward. I had been going outside of what my inner knowing or intuition might say to trust voices of authority around me. Everything from the medical field to the education field to the field of religion to my parents to so I had been programmed to go outward and upward. They would lead me to truth. They would lead me to God. And in that moment, when I couldn't trust another human, I went inward and upward. And I asked the question, what do I do now? And the thought that came was put chicken in a crock pot. That was startling because it seemed to be what I was looking for. It didn't make sense, but so quickly, as quick as it came and my mind wanted to challenge it, I realized there's a part of me that deflects inspiration. There's a
Mm,
part of me that says that doesn't make sense. That's awkward. That's new. That's whatever. And my soul was saying, you just ask a question. And either there is a source of truth or there's not. For you to reject the first answer that came through would be for you to dismiss the power of the divine. Like,
mm.
and this just hit like lightning. It takes much longer to explain it in words. It was just this knowing, like, did you not plead for help? And I was like, I did. And then it was like, trust it and see what happens. So I walked into the kitchen and I got out the chicken and I'm filling a crock pot and I look over and I remember, oh yeah, I have 5 sons. They have no idea about what's going on in the family,
Yeah.
the business, and they're going to need to eat in 4 hours and I'm going to need to go to work the business. So I was like, that was the right answer. And I'm in shock. So I wasn't thinking logically, and to recognize the spirit of the divine gave me that small of a practical step. It was like taking me by the hand and saying, here's your next move.
And
So in the
that's
Go ahead.
yeah, what strikes me with that is just it's such a little thing, you know, because it wasn't even just about you. It was about your sons and like it
Mm,
was just a very micro, which is beautiful, right? It's
yeah,
just it like you said, it's such a small thing, but it was like freeing you up by putting the chicken in the crock pot. It was
I
you were
could
gonna
handle.
experience freeing up so that you wouldn't
Mm.
have to, so you could go do what you needed to do.
Yes, and so all I noticed was, okay, I'm going to start trusting this voice. It was the first time in my life when I had prayed or asked a question of the divine and just implicitly trusted it. I also recognized in that moment I've probably prayed thousands of times,
Mm.
gotten an answer that I rejected because it didn't make sense. So I discovered these 4 steps. I had been asking questions, rejecting or resisting the answers, doubting that I had the ability to connect directly to God, and then talking myself out of whatever came. And with this pivot, 4 new steps showed up for me. Ask a question, receive it. And I physically now will pause and breathe and receive. This is how I take in answers, is that I take the time to pause and I use the breath to remind me as I review the words that come to my mind as an answer. I'm breathing this in and allowing it to sit in my mind. I'm breathing it in and taking it into my cells. I'm breathing it in and allowing it to rest in my heart. And I'm breathing it in and acknowledging my soul just helped me source that. I believe my
Yeah.
soul connects me to the divine creator. But it was an absolute 180 from how I had prayed, rejected, doubted, and talked
Mm.
myself out of things for years. And then the irony felt like I wasn't getting answers to prayers.
Right,
And
right,
then it was
right.
because I
Well,
wasn't worthy.
I don't know that we were ever taught embodied spirituality in
Yeah,
church, right? Like, you talk about bringing it into your being, bringing it into your body, noticing the sensations, and sometimes we don't trust those.
yes.
And I think we can conflate like elevated emotion, like with some of these things, and so it can be muddy for people. How would you I mean, I think don't you think it's individual for each person how they bring that in and receive that? I mean, how what would you say to somebody who's like, I don't know. I'm like so confused. I don't know if I'm just making these feelings up because I want to feel good and whatever and this is a nice emotion because it's connected to this. You know what I mean? Like this person or this experience or is this actually the divine coming through and communicating with me?
Yes, everyone does have their own experiences, and I see many parallels. In talking with people who are from various backgrounds and belief systems, I've practiced this hypothesis to see if what happened to me is replicatable. And I have found hundreds of people can understand this process. So I'd love to share it with you.
Yeah.
I view my being as an instrument, mind, body, heart, and spirit. I see them like strings on a guitar or a violin. I view them like that because if you have ever played an instrument or watched a musician before they play, they tune those instruments. If they don't, those strings can get out of tune. If I don't tune my mind, body, and heart, to the pitch of my soul, which I believe is always operating in truth, always operating from a place of love. If I don't tune the rest of me, the more mortal parts of me, I will be out of tune with the divine. And
And
so
that's a frequency thing too, because I think of music and I think of frequency and tuning to that. Yeah. To the
that's
divine
exactly where
frequency.
I was going. And so anyone that has listened to music can relate to this next piece. If you're listening to something and the singer is out of tune, if she's off key, or an instrument is off key, what happens in your body? How does your body respond to music that's out of tune?
I'm so triggered by this. I can't even tell you, Angel. Like
Goodness.
pitchiness, someone's
Yeah.
flat or whatever. I'm just like, yeah, I can't.
That meh, that what you did, like, you cringe. Your
Yeah,
physical body,
totally.
that's what I'm going for. Even if people aren't musicians, they have answered me 100% of the time that as a listener, their physical body cringes. This is a truth bomb. Our bodies are designed to resonate with the frequency of truth. You don't have
Mm,
to be a skilled musician and you don't have to be a gospel scholar to recognize that when something's out of alignment with truth, your physical body will tense and tighten and constrict in different places. So to imagine or to apply this, think about where in your body you get tight when you're anxious or nervous. Everybody can come up with a place, or when
yeah.
you're angry. The physical body will constrict. And at the core origin of the frequency is what we're talking about is fear. My hypothesis is that fear is the antithesis of love, and these are two easy elements to practice on our own bodies. Recognizing when I'm in any fear energy, it is not truth, it is not coming from God. God does not speak by the power of fear, I believe. And I will say again and again, these are just my hypotheses. I am
Yeah.
not here to doctrine, but I'm living an ongoing experiment with
Yeah.
truth and seeking truth. And so when fear comes in, the body will cringe, and fear can be fallacy, error, anger, fear, like that. But love comes into the body, and it's just like your experience when you hear music that is on pitch, and even imagine when perfectly blended harmonies just melt together. What does your body experience?
Resonance. Like you just are like, ah, and you feel lifted.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I'm loving this too. Keep going because I have a couple
So I
thoughts.
like watching, you said resonance, and that's the word, resonance versus dissonance. Dissonance is a clash, a musical term for a clash. But physically, many of us experience relaxation, goosebumps, tears coming to our eyes, our heart opening. There is a physical opening. So, exactly opposite of constricting, we have an expansion. Now, my hypothesis is when the divine is giving you an answer, your body will respond just like you're listening to music that is on point.
Mhm.
And when you're having a mortal thought coming from a place of fear, your body will restrict just as if you were listening to music that's out of tune. So as I go through any moment, like I'm asking a question, what do I do now? And I hear put chicken in the crock pot. I check my mind, the first string on my instrument, and my mind might say, that doesn't make sense. And I realize my mind is tuned to the frequency of the world. So it's probably not ever going to make sense to my mind at first because God's thoughts are not my thoughts. They're not anywhere near mortal thoughts. And every time I've experimented, God's thoughts have been 180 degrees from what I would have expected. They are the absolute opposite or so transcendent. So I'll just notice and be like, okay, it doesn't make sense to my mind. So I'll check my body, but my body's saying yes to this. My body's saying
Mm.
trust it. And then I'm like, check my heart. What does my heart say? And I just feel love or peace. Okay, I'm going to go with it. Then I'll go through the steps. I go put chicken in the crock pot. Now my mind tunes. See, you needed that and you didn't even know. So then I'm in resonance, mind, body, heart, and soul. The soul led me there. And there's so many moments
And then
I do
don't you feel
today.
like once you act on the prompting or the thought, that the resonance grows as a
Grows.
confirmation? So let me ask you this, Angel, and I want this to kind of feed into your story because I know, like, oh my gosh, you're worn out for your rest. You got all this, like that's a sinking feeling. That's a talk about dissonance, right?
Mhm.
And usually those moments in time open up a portal into a new kind of awareness or path, or because that moment's kind of like an initiation point, an entry point into the next level, especially if you're asking and seeking and wanting and in the recesses of your heart to do the right things or, to expand as you're saying. So what help us understand kind of like what was did you have dissonant feelings before like in your marriage? I know that when you talk about an existential crisis, I mean there can be usually existential crisis like everything blows up, everything you thought you knew,
Yeah.
all the relationship, like everything comes into question. You get really attuned to the illusion or the illusory aspects of your life. So were you already kind of was this completely out of the blue, like 100, or did you have any notions before or any red flags or anything?
Yes, but I was misinterpreting them because I did not know how to check in with the divine. Of course, I prayed every day. Please help me love my husband. I feel really disconnected from him. I would try to, I went to therapy and tried to take him to marriage therapy. We weren't communicating well, and his physical presence brought anxiousness on. However, we were operating just fine, like tag team parenting, taking care of our roles. So we were doing all the right things by the check marks in our life. We were going to church. He was working. I was a stay at home mom. But there was something really off, and my health was spiraling downward. So I was diagnosed with stage 2 adrenal fatigue, Hashimoto's, chronically elevated cortisol levels, and I was pre-diabetic. And when I had paused on that and said, the doctors weren't able to really help me with much of that, the spirit had told me, and this was a few years before the incident with the warrant, this is a spiritual problem at its root. And that's all I had. And I had just held that for years, going,
Mm.
what does it mean? Well, after the situation, I realized that I started having anxiety and depression when he started committing this crime that went on for years.
So you
So
just your
my
body was intuitively picking up.
body,
Yeah. A
and
lot of
I
times
thought it
when
was me. I thought I was doing something wrong. So I worked out harder. I went to the
Mm.
gym more. I ate more, tried to eat nutrition. I judged myself for not doing enough. Like I need to serve more. I was taking it all on and personalizing it. And the moment I discovered that my health problems really peaked the day that this first thing had happened in his life, and that the hiding and the lying and the stealing were taking place. And that was an expansive, like, wow, I need to learn to tap into frequencies, and I need the divine's help to help me sort what is mine and what is someone else's, and to
Mhm.
not just take it on with fear, guilt, shame, and judgment. But I had been raised in a society and a culture that operated on teaching me and motivating me through fear, guilt, shame, and judgment. So
Even
this was
though
applied
even though
into my life.
yeah, even though they culturally, and this is not just, I mean, this is true in all systems.
Hmm.
They they profess to be advocating for love, let's just say, or
Yeah.
autonomy or sovereignty or freedom or free will or what have you. And I think you and I talked about this before, but there's kind of like qualifiers to that in a box. Like you can get answers, but if it doesn't fit in these parameters, it's not of God or it's not true or so it can kind of mess with you. That's
Yes.
why I feel like that's why the second guessing can happen and the self-doubt and self-abnegation because we were kind of groomed to just defer all of
uh,
our inner revelation to check it out with people out here.
Yes, I'm so glad you said it that way. That's very much why I would doubt myself. And now I just expect if I'm going to ask God a question, I'm going to get a radical answer, and it's going to require courage. Every answer that has come from God since that moment in 2016 has required courage. I believe now that faith is trust plus courage to act. That's what I consider faith. And I thought I was a faithful person for 38 years because I believed. But no, faith is trusting the divine answering you and then having the courage to walk the walk or to act on whatever you were told, because it will mean, as you move forward on that answer, it will mean that you will unravel layers of your ego, layers of the persona that you've built, the reputation, all of the attachments that I had to relationships, to my status in the church or in the homeschool community.
The
Those
image
were
part.
image. I was narcissistic and didn't know it. I was really good at pointing fingers at him.
I'm a
And
recovering image, yeah, person too. It's because I mean, let's give us some grace here too. I mean, especially for women, you know, um, there's a pressure there. There's a
yeah,
pressure there to put on airs, to smile, to bite, it's basically spiritual bypassing.
yeah. To be perfect.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you
And
put
one of the moments the spirit told me this was really interesting, showed me these layers, was like, Angel, you have rejected answers from the spirit because they were hard or different or uncomfortable or inconvenient, so that you could hold on to what you've been told is right and true. So you are worshiping mortals. They are your idols, like all these voices of authority outside of me. And I could see images like on a mantle, as the spirit said, these are your idols that you worship, and my reputation was one of them.
whew,
And they were above God, and they were just like golden pieces of things. And I said, wreck it down. And it was like, are you sure? And I said, wreck it down. I am willing to lose everyone and everything. And I was terrified that if I kept asking these questions and getting these bold and unique answers that would take me on a different path than the path I was on, I could see this is not only going to crumble my marriage, but I'm going to lose all my Polynesian friends. I'm going to lose all my homeschool friends. I'm going to lose my church friends. I might lose family. I could just see that there's going to be a ripple effect, and it's not going to be small. And the words came to me, can I love myself through this? And those words have been an anchor. Can I love myself through this?
mm,
Because when I call that question, it's calling love into my being, and the fear cannot stay present. The
mm,
frequency of the fear of losing friends, family, losing my identity, it can't stay in my body. So that resonance or the dissonance floods out of my body, and resonance comes in because the answer is yes, I can love myself through this, and God will love me through anything. So there's this fortification in my very being that says, okay, let's do this. Whatever the next thing was, let's do this. And
mm,
one other thing that I think will resonate with some listeners who know the term, um, bringing back to who I was prior to this, I was trying to do my way into heaven. I was trying to do my way into perfection with achievements. It was like a stairway that I was climbing. And I discovered through the spirit teaching me, you've been trying to prove and earn your worth and value. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never saw it that way. But it's true. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good enough. I haven't done enough yet. So I was always setting goals,
it's never
physical,
enough.
mental, emotional, spiritual, always trying to be better, but it was
Yeah.
so I could be enough. And the spirit said to me, that's your modern day Tower of Babel.
Mm,
So in the Bible, it talks about the Tower of Babel being a place where people were trying to get closer to heaven and God by building a tower in the center of town to climb up to it and get on top, and thinking that that would get them closer. And when the spirit said that, it came in like a wrecking ball and just shattered paradigms I had held on to for so long.
mm,
Because, Angel, you're using your achievements, your doings to try to get closer to heaven and God. And I said, tear it down and then teach me what's the other way. And the other way is to just be, to realize number one, the fact that you exist is evidence you're worthy to exist. You're not an accident. You're exactly
mhm.
what God wanted you to be and to do.
Yeah.
And then so I don't have to prove myself. What do I do now? And it was like, return to that, find that in you. And that was finding my soul, listening again to my intuition. The more I did that, the more awe and wonder I had that this being, me, can connect directly to the creator of all things. If that is true, and that's what's happening, that I'm communicating and channeling truth and being guided in every moment that I go inward and upward, that is so amazing. There's nothing I could achieve on earth that would be more valuable than that connection. So worth just descended on me. Angel, you don't have to run another marathon. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to homeschool your
You don't
kids.
have
Like,
to
you don't
do one
have,
more thing to earn anything.
no, you can come back to just
So,
being.
so I want to ask you through this process of kind of this unraveling and sort of questioning everything. You shared something about there were some radical things coming through that maybe didn't make sense in your mind, or they weren't part of your, let's just say, your programming or what you were taught or whatever. Just kind of flew in the face of that a little bit. I want to ask you, maybe just think of maybe one or two things that were super radical that you maybe didn't know how to place until you started to integrate it or move on it. But it also struck me as I was listening to you that oftentimes, especially in like cultural religious, systems, we actually pray to have our beliefs reinforced
Yes, lady. Oh,
over and over. We're just praying to strengthen our testimony of what's already there, the traditions, the doctrines, etc. But we don't often pray to just have our mind and heart and gut open, like those three centers you were talking about.
Mm.
And you mentioned pause, breathe, receive. That's my mantra is stop, breathe, receive.
Oh,
Um, and I actually have met so many people who their access point of awakening was taking literally everything that they have ever been taught in school and online and media, church, families, whatever systems, completely taking all their books, all their programs, all the trainings they went to, and just being like, putting it over here, teach me. And then just opening up to that. And it can feel really daunting, but how different is that than praying and prostrating yourself to try to capitulate to what's already been placed before you versus being taught with living truth, living words, living direction for you personally. And some people think that's completely heretical. So maybe
it's so
share
hard.
your thoughts on that and then also share maybe something radical that came through that you were like, "Wait a minute. I'm not supposed to believe that."
Yes. Oh, so much of what you just said has been my experience. I was shown in that moment. Did not need to go back to my bookshelf. I didn't need to go back to listening to podcasts. I didn't need to go back to mortals because there is a 24/7 live stream available to me from the divine. So why would I tune my frequency to any other like radio station? If you knew that on your radio you could tune into God, why would you listen to country music
Yeah.
or oldies, So I just stopped listening to all those other things exactly like you said. I'm
The
not listening.
oldies. Sorry, that makes me giggle. Oh.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's like the old programming. Stop
Yeah.
listening to the oldies. Quit playing on them on repeat. Okay, so going inward and upward. Well, immediately, the same moment that I discovered there was a warrant out for his arrest, I want you to know too, there was a moment of from shock to I got to ask questions. I mean, I'm speechless. I knew as a human that I need not open my mouth to my husband because I would slay him with shame
Mm.
and rage and anger. So I turned inward and upward. And long story short, I was shown his innocence. And it's the most beautiful thing. Every
Mm.
person is doing the best they can with what they know and feel and fear in this moment.
Beautiful.
So they are ignorant of knowing how to operate in any other way than how they're operating. And we can argue that, but if you don't believe me, just
Well,
ask
no,
God.
that's actually a Christed statement. I mean, they know not what they do, right?
That's what I felt as soon as it dropped in. I was like, there is so many moments. Forgive them, Father. Where Christ's example is saying people are innocent. You're free. Go and sin no more. Like, I forgive you. It's never been a wrestle to be forgiven because where there's ignorance, meaning I don't know what I don't know. So I'm only operating out of what I know right now. Where there's ignorance, there's innocence. It's a synonym for me now. So my heart was softened. I didn't immediately say like, "Oh my gosh, this marriage is over and I'm out of here." I was not mad. I even said to him, the first conversation we had was, "I'm so sorry to hear what's been going on for you. I have nothing but compassion." And he said, "I did not expect you to say that." I said, "You and me both, bro. That is not the angel you've been
I
married
know
to."
when I read that in your book, I'm like, I'm not sure that I would have the semblance of,
It had
because
come through so strong.
fierce feminine mama bear comes out sometimes, and you just go into protection mode for
Yeah.
your being and your children and your family and the lifestyle and everything, and so that took a lot of discipline and tuning in for you to do that.
Yes, and I just adopted. I'm just going to act on courage with all these things coming through. I am not trusting the mortal mind, even my mortal mind, anymore. I will act on things that drop in and do that resonance. And to say those words to him brought resonance of peace. It was more powerful than the raging angel. I was shown that I had been a Pharisee. I had been a Pharisee. I had a religious ego. So I want to move forward now with I did not intend to divorce him. It wasn't because he did something wrong and I was going to blame him for our marriage failing. I just continued every day to ask, what do you want me to do and where do you want me to go? And minute by minute, literally living in kind
Mhm.
of a state of shock still because I had no idea if he was going to go to jail and how I'd provide. And but little by little, 2 months went by, and one day when I asked, what do I do today? It was fire him from the business, tell him to move out, and tell him you're going to file for divorce. And I rejected it because the
Mhm.
programming said that's not what you do. You've been married and sealed for time and all eternity. So I went back to the mortal box, the mortal programming. Here's what's right. So my mind was saying, no, that can't be from God. weeks went by and I kept asking what to do. And a second time it came through in the exact same words. And I was afraid that that is wrong, that I'm supposed to endure to the end and help fix this. And 3 months went by and it came for the last time. It was given to me and it said, "This is the final time it will be delivered. If you're not going to act, it won't be given anymore."
Mm.
And I again got to look at the next level of who and what do I trust? Am I here to worship man? Am I here to stay in this marriage from a place of fear? Do I need to know first what God's outcome is going to be before I have the faith to act on this? I want to make sure he's okay and I want to make sure that life's going to get
Yeah.
better. Of
We wanna
course,
just, like, control or see what's yeah, and that is faith, right? The faith is acting without knowing.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, so take us through that. So you listened.
Yes.
You
So here's
you
where the
you're
next
finally like, "Okay, got it."
thing happened. So I've acted on that. And then the very first day that I was alone in a house, I thought, I don't know how to be a single mom. I don't even know what to do now. Having been a homeschool stay at home mom, like now I need to go to work. And so my next question is, what now? Okay. I acted on that. He's out of the house. I've contacted a lawyer. Like I took those steps. What now? And the spirit said, you need to go away from here. You need to go into nature and you need to spend a couple weeks meditating. And I said, okay, that's the what piece. I learned to ask what questions. What do you want me to do? What am I to learn from this? That was a new way to pray. I used to pray asking, how am I going to get through this? Or why is this
Mm.
happening to me? So I asked a what question. And within a couple of days, a friend called and said, Angel, I just bought a home in Maui. You should come visit me. And I thought, hot dog, God, that's a great idea. I'm going to go to Maui. And I got online and saw the airline tickets out of Vegas to Maui were $530, and my heart sank. I had zero money. I had zero of my own savings. We were poor and living on food stamps and struggling with the business. I thought, okay, I can go donate plasma. I can do this, but then I thought, what's the word on the street gonna be? What will people in my ward say? What will my bishop say when Angel, who's getting help from the ward to feed her family, takes a trip to Maui? So I dropped into shame. I even thought, what would my mom say? I could
Mhm.
imagine her voice saying, how could you take a trip at a time like this and leave your boys home when their parents are divorcing? So voices of shame and doubt came in and I sank. And in that moment, there was a sudden sensation like I had just been locked in a cellar. The cold shivers came over me and
Mm.
a sense of darkness, like a door had been shut. And so I paused and I remember just going, what just happened? What just happened? And the spirit had just left me. I had been receiving light in through the top of my head, like love and warmth for months as I turned inward and upward for answers. And suddenly I was cold and alone. And so
Mm.
I said, "What just happened?" And said, "You just shifted out of faith and into fear. You have been listening to the Lord for months and acting with courage and trusting. And you suddenly took this answer. You had the what, go into nature. You had the where, Maui was open to you, and you went into fear. And I repented of my fear for the first time in my life. And I discovered when we repent of fear, there's nothing more to repent of because you shift back into love and in obedience to the divine. So I said, I apologize for worshiping fear. Anything you listen to above or outside of the divine is an idol. So
Yeah.
I said, cast this idol of fear aside, and I come back and I will trust and I will move forward, even though I didn't know the how or the why. So I call this the co creation of miracles with God. This is the pattern, the what and where miracle, the what and where pattern for co creating miracles with God. If I ask, what do you want me to do and where do you want me to go? I will be told. And I discovered that that pattern is all through the scriptures and any story of a disciple. They ask, what would you have me do? Where do I go? And you do it. So once I committed, the very next day, I got a letter in the mail and it was from commercial insurance company that our business had. And it said, you overpaid in the last quarter. Here's a reimbursement check to Angel for $590, the
Whoa.
exact dollar amount of that flight. And
Mm.
that's when it solidified the pattern I'd been learning for months. If I stay in my domain, asking what and where questions and then acting, God provides the how, it just shows up and later explains the why. So I'll fast forward. I took that 2 week trip. I meditated. I was shown how to handle the next couple of years of my life. I was shown clean houses, don't go to use your master's degree and get back into that career of clinical therapy. It was just clean for elderly people. That turned out to be a gift because I could homeschool. I was around loving people. I could shift my schedule whenever I needed to and have my kids. They could pay me really well. Like, I would have never thought, as a woman with a master's degree, go clean toilets.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would have thought that.
But sometimes those mundane tasks are really, like, soul instructive,
They
right?
were.
And humbling.
Oh,
Yeah. So, okay, let's move into how did this affect your religious path? Because
it,
you
yeah,
had this, like you said, you had, things were pretty comfortable
yeah.
and you were doing the checklisting things until you kind of couldn't or lost the impetus because of life.
Mhm.
Again, that's another awakening entry point when the things we were doing before um, don't produce the same result.
Yeah, the more I listened to the voice when I was going inward and upward and followed these promptings, the more I realized there was a path splitting. There was a divergent path. And I had one leg in the foundation of my upbringing and one listening to these new words. And I felt like I was being pulled into the Chinese splits. And I knew there's going to come a day of reckoning where you're going to need to make a big choice. Um, I A friend of mine recently said, "You were in it to win it." They described me as a member.
Me
They
too.
recognized I did all the things. I had served a mission. I married in the temple. I'd been Relief Society president 3 times.
We
I
might mention to some of our listeners the religion of origin you and I both share is the
think
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Saints or Mormonism. And
mhm,
it's quite a high demand path, religiously speaking. um, there are a lot of things that keep you busy, and there are a lot of very detailed instructions for how to live, move, breathe, be. So
yeah.
anyway, just wanted to insert that there
Require
for
There are a lot of
requirements. Yeah, they're not
requirements.
even suggestions. These are musts.
Yes, requirements for worthiness. And so, um, the ex I kept having miraculous moments that didn't make sense. I wanna just share one other. I was, this was fast forward a little bit of time, but I was on my way to an appointment. And as I'm driving down the road to this office building, I did ask, "What would you have me do today?" Even though I'm doing my own mortal task list, I check everything now. I check everything. Here's what Angel thinks she needs to do. Here's what Angel would think in this moment. I check everything with the divine. Is it true? Is this true? Or what do you want me to do? So I'm on my way to an appointment I think I'm supposed to go to. And I said, "What would you have me do today?" And it told me go to a specific person's house who I knew and had not seen or talked to in years. This is a moment. Do you listen or do you put it on the side? Make a note, call that person later. I had lived for so long putting those inspirations at the bottom of my to-do list, at the bottom of my Tower of Babel, because I was had already made commitments to other mortals. So in that moment, it was like, are you going to listen or not? I decided to text the person and say, I'm not going to make it to this meeting. Face the judgment or the shame from a mortal because the spirit is saying, do this now. I went to that house and I discovered the person that I was sent to seek was suicidal in that
Mm,
space, at that moment.
mm,
And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "You tell me." I
mm,
honestly just said, "I have no idea, but the Lord told me to come now." And that's when he told me what was happening. So, one more. So, here, I just want to lay the foundation. I'm having these experiences daily that are like, these thoughts are not my thoughts, and they keep leading me to amazing experiences. So one was a Sunday morning. I'm dressed, ready for church, driving towards the chapel, and I still said, "What would you have me do?" My mind is programmed to think Sundays at 9 a.m. you be in the pew because that was the pattern. But I still ask, "What would you have me to do today?" And as I'm approaching the church, the voice said, "Go to the grocery store." Now, this is funny and shocking because as members of this church, the
breaking the
Sunday,
Sabbath,
yeah, it would be called breaking the Sabbath.
Angel?
And people would say, "There's no way God would tell you to do that." If I were to present that to, I would believe that most of my leaders or close friends would say, "There's no way God would tell you to go shopping on Sunday because that is breaking the Sabbath. It's against our doctrine." And I was just in such a playful, curious state. What will happen? What will happen if I listen? So I drive and I park in the grocery store, and it's only a few blocks away from the church. Even as I get out of the car, I feel shame. I look around and think, as people are coming to church, are they going to see me in my dress? Why is she going into the? I mean, that is how embarrassing it was.
Right, right.
I breathed it out. I breathed in what I had been told. I'm receiving it. I'm going to the store. And as I'm walking to the front door, I think, I don't even have a list. I don't even know what I'm doing. to go without knowing what you're doing is a key. As long as you're
Mm,
doing what's been told, don't wait to know what it's about. I got to the door, they open, and there's a greeter for the store who happens to be a quote unquote inactive member of our congregation. She's someone who is a member but doesn't attend very often. And when she attends, she smells like smoke and she wears immodest clothes and all these rules that she
mm,
breaks. And yet she and I had bantered enough to become friends whenever she showed up, and
mm.
her language didn't offend me. And so there, and I just think, huh, is this why I'm here? And so I say hello to her, and she's like, why are you not at church? And I say, why are you not at church? We just banter, you know? And I'm thinking, I honestly don't know. And so I asked the spirit right then, what now? And the spirit said, hug her. And she's a prickly person. I didn't think she was going to want it, but I put my arms out, and then she very with hesitantly reached for me, and I grabbed her and embraced her, and I held her longer than a comfortable pat pat hug. I really held her until the spirit said, tell her that you love her.
Mm,
And as I said those words into her ear, she softened. And in that moment, I realized, unto the least of these,
mm.
that I could have had my fancy dressed up booty sitting in a pew listening to other people preach, or I could have been ministering to those
Yeah.
who are somewhere else. It made
Mm,
so much sense. And she's a single mom and she struggles. She doesn't have a support system. And the ability to just touch her that day,
mm,
I knew that was enough. I didn't need to sit for 3 hours. I didn't need to give a lesson to someone else. I in that day, and it was just that day. So I took it minute by minute, and slowly there was a deconstruction of my belief system. I kept attending church. I was kept teaching the women's group for quite a while until the spirit told me it is finished. And one day I was actually at the door of the church to go into the church, and I said, what would you have me do? And the spirit said, everywhere you're going and all that you're doing every day, you are speaking truth. You are being love. All of these things. And if when you walk in this building, you can't be you. Because I had all kinds of things happening at church because I was weird and doing things differently and outside of the box.
and you were
There were a lot of
probably
things.
sharing from your heart and soul
Yeah.
in that women's group,
Hmm.
and I think I read in your book it wasn't always received
Yeah.
the right way
Yeah.
from
I got
some, but
chastised. Back
most
pulled in.
resonated with it, but there were
Yes,
some that
humans resonated. There were tears. There were people. That was the most powerful lesson I've ever heard. That really touched me. And at the same time that that happened, I was reported to our clergyman, called a bishop, and brought in and sat down in front of him. And he chastised me for not teaching from the manual.
and what was
So
the manual? What was the content that you were like, I think I'll go with my heart on this one rather than buy the
uh,
book."
I had studied. It was to regurgitate a conference talk of a leader, and I had read it 3 times and prepped the lesson. So it was a one of our male priesthood leaders' words, and I was supposed to regurgitate it and teach it to the woman, even though they'd already listened to it during the conference and they had copies of the magazine at home. That's what I was to teach. And I had planned that lesson with that heart in mind. And then in my planning, I had closed my eyes and pictured the day, and I saw every woman sitting in a specific space. Like I saw the women of my congregation sitting in these seats, and I saw myself go through the lesson. When I got there that Sunday, every woman was sitting in the exact seat that I had seen
Mm,
her, including the woman on the back row in her 80s on oxygen. That's what first caught my mind, is like, I knew she was going to be sitting there. I knew this one was going to be here today. I knew this lady
mm.
that's normally out of town was going to be on the front row. So I trusted my heart and I just taught from my heart. And I taught the principles of that talk, of that lesson. And I taught them through the filters of my heart, soul, and experience as a woman.
As a woman, and that's key. I feel like, yeah, we don't have in patriarchal systems, there is not enough women's history or women's embodied knowing, or you know what I'm saying? Like the authority part of it is looming so large that we miss sometimes the heart of what these doctrines are supposed to lead us to.
Yeah. And after that meeting, a large majority of the room stood in line to come up and talk to me. So I was on this incredible high of trusting the divine and having that woman on oxygen. She waited in line with her oxygen tank to come to me and said, I have never in all my life as a member, I have never had a lesson that hit me like this. And I just hugged
Mm.
her and said, thank you. Then right after that, as I'm walking out, I get called in to visit and to be chastised, to be told I did it the wrong way. And I just kept meeting these contradictions. But as a teacher, I'm told to pray and ask the Spirit for direction and teach by the Spirit. But then in reality, I'm being told, no, you teach what we tell you to teach. So eventually, it did come to the moment where I was at the church to go in, and I paused and said, what would you have me do? And the Spirit said, you are a living transmission of truth and light and testimony everywhere you go. You don't need to preach to these people. Like, you don't need to have a
Mhm.
calling here. You don't need to stand up and bear your testimony.
Like,
Go
it's
be.
not obligatory on you. It's not being put on you, like,
Yeah,
imposed
yeah,
on you, I guess.
yeah. You don't have to be here to get your worthiness card. And so I just asked, where would you have me go? And I wasn't like going to make a direct exit from the membership in the church, but just today, where do you want me to go? Today, where do you want me to go? And so I have been led to many other places on Sundays rather than to be in a pew. And sometimes I have been led back to be in the pew. And so I live trusting that the divine is my guide, and that
Yeah.
what mortals think is what mortals think. It's irrelevant to me now.
That's so beautiful. And as I'm listening to you, there's a lot of parallels with our path sitting in church. And um, I'll just share this really quick. It's coming through if intuitively feel like I should. Uh, I was sitting in Sunday school listening to a gentleman who was very respected in the community, former professor, very versed in doctrine, multiple priesthood leadership callings. Everybody in the congregation loved this man, and he was brilliant, and I really liked him too. But the content of this particular lesson was making everyone squirm in feelings of shame and unworthiness. And my husband was like, "Go ahead, raise your hand," because he could see me literally squirming in my seat. All right.
Yeah.
So talk about dissonance. And I think
Mhm.
that I was picking up on a lot of the energy of everyone else who were having similar feelings, but just didn't dare say anything. So I raised my hand and I spoke from a place of feminine empowerment, but also from a place of like, why can't we turn this in, I literally said to the teacher, while it's ideal that everybody is on this certain ideal, has this ideal persona or takes these certain steps, sometimes they are testing us in how we will respond with mercy, love, and compassion. So I basically I don't remember what I said, but I know the gist of it was let's turn this into love, mercy, and compassion and grace. And
Yes.
after I said that, you could hear like absolute utter silence. And it made me squirm a little bit, but I didn't regret what I did. And he
Mhm.
just completely got out his scriptures and debunked literally everything I said. And it was the same thing with you. As I was
Wow.
walking out, literally a line of people were there saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said what you did." There was a girl who was visiting from college and she was sitting by her dad and she told me that she leaned over to her dad and said, "I need to get out of here right now." And she goes, "And that's when you raised your hand and spoke and I sat down in my seat. So
Ah,
thank you." And I've reflected on that quite a bit because I knew that the reason I was squirming wasn't just because I needed to get something off my chest. I was being a mouthpiece for the dissonant feelings in the room of people literally swimming in shame.
yes.
And especially that young college girl who in tears shared that with me. Um, so the other thing that struck me as I was listening to you about the woman in the grocery store is how many people are actually sitting in church on Sunday? A very minor percent of the population. Yet, are we really ministering to people if we're just doing these regimented traditions day in and day out, going through, these checklisted things, if you will, to show in outward ways
Yes.
that we're
Just like
worthy?
Pharisee. Yeah. Just
Very
like the
pharisaical. And that's also what came to me too, is that Christ, through the Gnostic texts that I've studied, as well as the New Testament teachings and some, even some other ancient texts, that paradox, nuance, like that parables,
Oh my God.
there was a lot of misty area for, like, he would always reflect, like, "What do you think?" If he was ever asked a question, he rarely gave a straight answer.
Hmm.
He either wrote in the dirt or he gave
Yes.
them some time to chew on their answer so that they could arrive at, their own embodied
Mhm.
wisdom
Or ask a question.
or
Ask
at
them.
yeah, inquiry, and so anyway, I got so passionate about this. It's probably right around, I think our paths were parallel and mirroring each other in a lot of ways because, I had to make a choice of, "Who am I pleasing here?" You know, who where's the reward coming from? Is this intrinsic or is it extrinsic? And then I had to go a little deeper and be like, "You know what? I just want the truth." That is and freedom. And so because I value this so deeply, it was very similar to what you shared. I am willing to risk my reputation, my relationships, my church membership, everything I hold dear, every single thing, just so that I can have the truth. And I'm not saying my truth is everyone's truth,
Right.
but what I arrived at was so resonant for me and so aligned with what I didn't even know I was actually wanting. So anyway, I just wanted to
Listening
share
to you,
that the paradox piece.
that
It's
I can't believe you said this. This is actually my favorite interview ever because your words are my lived experience. And the fact that you brought up paradox is something I probably wouldn't have thought to share. As I have gone inward and upward, the answers that have come to me have presented paradoxes again and again. And I used that word. I was like, God, I feel like I'm in a constant paradox. And it said, that's your way to truth. That's your portal to truth. And I had to look up, I'm like, it feels like a paradox. Let me look up the definition. I remember actually looking it up and going,
mm,
yep, that's where I am again. And then seeing that in Christ's teachings and being like, oh, because we're transcending realms of thought. That's why it feels like a paradox. But this can't be when I'm up against a wall that's been placed there and I've been told this is right, this is true, don't walk past this point. And the spirit saying, actually take a wrecking ball and smash that wall and go right through it. There was so many paradoxes. And essentially, where this led me was living from fear to living from love, and the word freedom and truth, just like you said it. I went to that same place. What do you really want, Angel? As I'm unraveling, I want friends. I want to do what's right. I want to please people. I want to be good. I want perfection. That moment came in too. What do I really want? And it was just truth. I want to find the truth and align. That's it.
mhm.
And have that freedom. You are speaking my soul speak language. Fast forward till more recent times, I want to share, so anyone listening that might be at various stages of awakening or coming home to themselves or finding the divine and a relationship to that for themselves, so where's the hope in this? It sounds like you just lost everything. I just want to say, I used to parent with control. I used to partner with my spouse with a lot of condemning, shameful language. I had a ton of resentment. Those things were also harming my body. I was
Mm,
getting sicker and weaker because of that energy that I was perpetuating in the home. As I began to listen, the spirit taught me how to parent totally differently. Totally differently. Instead of saying, here's the rules, here's the law, obey them, obey them. I was able to find my heart and connect with my children in each moment from a heart space, asking them what they feel, asking them, if you tune into yourself, what does your inner self say you should do right now?
which is that
And
reflective listening that we're talking about Jesus was doing. Yeah.
yeah, and me showing them, I believe you're a divine being. You might have fewer years on this planet than I do, but I guarantee your soul is as brilliant as mine and as worthy to connect to the divine. So if we just get still and I allow you a moment to check in and say, what does your heart want? Mom, my heart doesn't want to go to church today. I'm willing to trust it. Mom, my heart wants to stay up past 10 o'clock. All the rules. Mom,
Mm,
my heart wants to watch this movie, and I let go of fear and control and fear and control. And in my book on page 169, there is a quote from my son who was
mm,
9. He says, we were out walking and he said this to me. when you realize your mom had to let go of God to meet God.
Mm,
When a
that's
9-year-old
powerful.
could pick up on my shift, that I let go of the God that man had created to discover the God that created man. That's
Mm,
exactly what happened, and he could feel the shift, and more recently, my 16-year-old son just said to me, "I'm glad you changed when you did." And he brought it up kind of randomly as I was taking him to work one day, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "If you had changed when I was little, I probably wouldn't remember or have noticed the impact. And if you had waited and changed when I was older, I might have been repeating your same habits of controlling, angry parenting." And he said, "But you changed
mm.
when I needed it the most, and I see what it means to live your life by love." So some of the ramifications of this shift, while seemingly scary or terrifying about what we lose on the outside, was not only am I getting these reflections from my own children, and not only now am I in a partnership that's so epic and unparalleled. I've never seen a companionship like the one I
Well,
have
let's
now.
yeah, so you did get divorced, just so
I
we
did get divorced.
and
Yep.
you're now in a longer term relationship that's been
5 years.
probably probably I mean, just well, we'll get to that in a minute, but can I just read this part in your book that to our listeners that I really appreciated? It's all about trusting and letting go of judgment. This is what you say on page 171. When we live seeking validation, we give up our freedom by allowing others' opinions and ideas to govern our beliefs, emotions, and behaviors. Instead of looking outward for answers, guidance, and governing, we can begin to practice going inward to our true selves and then upward. And you talked about that. The teaching of spiritual practices, even with the best of intentions, can easily spawn spiritual confusion and idol worship. And then you did talk about for much of your life being an idol worshiper, and then these truths that came through, and I'm just gonna rattle them off, and you can tell me which one as we kinda wrap up that you want to extrapolate a little bit more on. So there is, let's see, discerning darkness from light, darkness and light. Again, we get into some paradox there.
Mhm.
Separating error from truth, perceiving fear and love, experiencing sadness and joy. So these are all polarities, right? The extreme end of each one. And then observing chaos and peace. My favorite one that you wrote about was playing in captivity and freedom. Of all of those, is there one that is especially meaningful to you that you want to share with us as we kind of round out our discussion?
Sure. I think discerning truth from error, I now have set aside the words good, bad, right, and wrong. I no longer seek to judge myself, my thoughts, my actions in those terms. And even that is threatening because you say that, and in my programming, it'll be like, oh my gosh, now you're just hedonistic, or you're some kind of a non religious person. But I replace that with I seek truth, and I seek to see truth versus error. And why it is because I recognized everything in my life that had a label of that's good, that's bad, that's right, they're wrong. It was all from what mortals had told me. So I have these hardcore definitions with which I'm always judging myself and others against, and it's not necessarily true. Every moment I can ask God what is true. So I'll notice that I'll have a judgment of something, like they shouldn't be watching that, they shouldn't be saying that, and I'll catch it in my mind because I observe my thoughts now. I pay a lot of attention to my thoughts, and I go, oh, who or what taught me to think this way? And if it
Mm,
goes back to a mortal moment, the spirit showed me, Angel, if any mortal taught you to believe something, there's a potential margin of error. That was a powerful awakening. So if there's a potential margin of error with a thought that I have that might be common popular thought, it might even be researched evidence. If it came from a mortal, it's worth checking. So I will just stop and go, Spirit, I'm noticing that I just thought they shouldn't be watching this. What is true? And in that moment, I'm taught the truth. And that's my truth. And it's not for me to go and tell the world, here's what's true for everybody, like you alluded to earlier. It's me knowing what's true for me in this moment, and it absolutely shifts everything. There's no way that an overarching, generalized set of doctrine can effectively guide people in every day of their life without the sovereignty of being able to go directly to the source and trust that. And the biggest shift in my life is I've gone from being one of those women who would sit in the women's class and say things like, Well, I just get confused sometimes. I don't know if it's the spirit answering me, if it's my own thoughts. That's such a common
Yeah.
fear, and I
And that's
believe
kind of how I opened this discussion
mhm,
because we have been, um, I don't want to say groomed. It's not quite the right word, but we've been programmed and conditioned
mm.
to self-doubt
Yes,
due to perhaps we're not quite worthy enough to get the answer in that moment.
yes,
And that I feel like that's actually really sinister. I'm coming to believe more and more just how sinister that is.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
it robs people of their own, like you're talking about, the sovereignty of personal revelation. It robs the soul if we're always constantly asking if we're worthy enough to get truth.
Yes.
Well, what does that even mean? Worthy. I've had so many discussions about the worthiness thing, but as I get older and as I have distanced myself from some of these indoctrinations, I now see it as probably what like one of the biggest lies that we've been sold is that we cannot trust our own character and worthiness and intuition and revelation. We have been, and that's not just true for religion. It's just everywhere.
True in relationships. It's true in the workplace. It's true in so many settings. Yes.
That we
Yeah.
could be separate from the love of God, that we could be separate from truth, from spirit, from knowing, for ourselves. And, I know there's a big mass conscious awakening happening with this right now.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm grabbing the popcorn and I'm just watching. I mean, it's you can see the unraveling. You can see the wheels turning with a lot of people right now. Um, Angel, I want to talk about this event coming up that I'm so excited for. Um, because, well, first of all, tell people how Yin on Fire happened.
So as
Because
I'm
yeah,
awakened,
it's
yeah, I'm starting to have this experience with direct with God, and I'm losing connection with my lifelong community of friends. And I was just asking God, where do I go to find people? And I had been noticing for several years as a native of Southern Utah, and then I had this business that had me out in the community more recently, that people were flocking to this area and they all would share similar stories. I never intended to move to Utah, but we were driving through and just felt like we need to be here. So many similar stories. And I started collecting like numbers in my mind and noticing something's happening because the common denominator was they were spiritually awakened conscious people or somewhere in the healing realm, healing modalities. They were practitioners of this. So I was curious for years, and I asked God one day, what do I do with this? Like, I'm observing it, so is there something you want me to do about this? And I heard the words, gather them, gather your tribe. And I held that in my heart. And then not too long after that, see, I asked, what do you want me to do? So the next question is, where do I go? That's my pattern for co-creating miracles. Um, where do I go? And a friend said, hey, I've got this land in Cedar City, Utah. If you ever want to do an event out here, I've got 65 acres of venue land. Tell me what you want to do. And so I started to ask the spirit questions. What does this look like to gather people? And the idea of a conscious festival, a conscious convention was the first word. And then it became a soul sibling family reunion. Gather the souls that are being awakened and they feel like they're operating alone or in isolation, and start to bring them together and let them know they're not alone. This is happening. We are awakening globally. And so that friend approved the idea. He said, this is one of the best ideas I've ever heard. And in 2023, in September, we had our first Yin on Fire festival. And yin referring to the divine feminine energy, the yin and the yang. So, because I was witnessing a feminine energy is rising, it's awakening, it's reclaiming its birthright. For example, for me to have intuition, for me to speak scripture, for me to channel truth, for me to directly connect to God, for me to heal, those things are not just happening to me as some crazy lady that's out in woo woo land. It's all over the world. And this healing is also helping to heal men. So we are breaking down stereotypes and myths and wounds on both the masculine and feminine energies. And that is the goal of the festival. So, Yin on Fire is held in September. This year it will be the 19th through the 22nd. And it's a 4 day, 3 night healing festival with over 100 workshops to learn about the histories and modalities of healing from practices from around the world. We have everything ranging from holistic functional medicine practitioners to shamans to Reiki providers to so many. It's just hard to list. It's amazing. And there will be yoga. There's a lake out there, a swimming lake, and a 200-foot water slide for fun. There's fun and dancing. We have dance groups coming that do somatic release. We'll have
Mm,
concerts every night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, full size stage with concerts and light shows with uplifting music. It is so phenomenal. And we're just
I
so
just
excited.
think that
Last year went
is
so well.
so beautiful. And I know Wendy Bennell, she's been on my podcast before, and you were working with her, and I know last year it was a smashing success. I'm really excited to come.
Mhm,
Um, any place where people are seeking this beautiful, conscious, love-based compassion path, um, and also aren't shying away from the deeper work, the shadow work. I mean,
mhm,
sometimes you have to keep it light, right? You have to, you have to move through these collective states and these the wounds we carry, whether it's ancestral or whatever. But when you, like you're saying, like when you gather, you fortify each other. It's also very affirming, like, oh, well, if God wasn't spearheading this, and if I was wrong to leave this other tradition to come over and do this, why would it be so? Why would it resonate so much? And why would the tree be bearing this beautiful fruit if it was wrong?
yeah. I love that you
Um,
use the words, the resonance and the fruit. By their fruits ye shall know them. I really do want to be able to share that, even though my mind again and again and again has said, what if you're making the wrong choice? What if you're being led astray? What if? I've looked at all of those, and those feelings bring that cringe in my body. They bring that fear, even sometimes trembling. And then when I turn inward and upward, the spirit shows me the miracles that I've lived, the joy that I've had, and I cannot deny the resonance in my body. I no longer test the same on psychological tests because
mm,
fundamentally I'm wired differently now.
you're a new
I
creature.
in my mind from a place of love, and I can see it in myself. I love this version of Angel. I'm no longer trying to prove and earn my worth and value to the point of exhaustion while constantly feeling like I'm failing in one area or another. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy. That's what that old model had me on that path. And now it's so easy to witness. I operate from a place of love. I am checking my thoughts, my words, and my actions, and listening to the divine and operating in sync with that spirit. I love who I am, and I'm able to love others. It used to be so hard to forgive others and love others. Everything was just a struggle. And now things move through me with grace and ease and flow. And the fact that I can be love and emit it, to me, resonates as Angel, you are on the path of God. I don't need any other validation from mortals to know that that's the case. And what we saw last year at this festival, repeatedly people said to me or they messaged me that they'd never been in a space where they felt so much love and acceptance. And that alone is a beautiful reason to gather in the
Yeah,
way that we gathered, and had the workshops where people got their experiential classes, so you get to do your shadow work and you get to be held in a space of love and acceptance. It's transformational for sure.
I love that. And I think that's just what we're all craving. We want that, you know, unconditional regard. And we want to find people who are on that track. It's
Mm,
really uncomfortable to me now to be around somebody who's judging my spiritual worthiness. And it's not even something they say, it's a feeling I get.
mhm,
Um, but I think what you've hit upon is really profound, and we'll kind of end with this, and that is that when you learn to go inward and you learn to really love yourself, and we're not talking just words, like you had a resonant, like you love yourself, you accept yourself, you know how to get out of judgment, you know how to observe your thoughts. That is rendering you a superpower. to be able to do that for other people, but you cannot do that until you've come to that place within yourself. And so I honor you for stepping forward and doing, you get the download, you get the message, you do it. And it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of self-discipline. But so thank you. And then share with us. I know this book, I'm holding it up for our YouTube people. It's called Soul-u-lar. Uh, A Mormon Woman's Transcendent Journey to Love is the by title. Absolutely love it. Soul-u-lar Evolution. It's very good. I shared with you that I've marked up several places in this that I wish I would have asked you some of these things, but it's okay. We're good. Um,
Yes.
I think my take home message from this conversation and your book is that there's just more than one way to walk with God. And and so I think we're moving into a time where we're going to come into deep acceptance for all paths. We're not there yet. There's a lot of fear, a lot of fear.
Yes.
But where can people find you online and how do they get into this beautiful Yin on Fire event?
Oh, well, let's start there. Please go to yinonfire.com and you can see all about it, read about it, watch the highlight video that's on the homepage. And if it calls to you, if it's a soul's yes, please join us. Just come and experience that. And my book's available on Amazon and they can find me on Facebook if they want to look up Soul-u-lar Evolution. You can join my mentoring group. I believe you'll put this in the show notes too, that
Yes.
I'll just
Yeah,
click. But I'd
absolutely.
love if anyone's interested. I'm a life coach now instead of a therapist was my former career many years ago. But I just coach people as a guide to help you practice inward and upward on your own and help you separate your human thinking, everything you've been programmed in your ego to think, to be able to witness and trust your soul. And it's so fun to work with people from all different backgrounds and philosophies and religions and even different countries that these steps work, that
Mm,
people learn to listen to their thoughts, pause, and realize how harmful, negative, fear based those are, and just challenge it. Maybe that's not from God, and they can turn. And even if they don't call it God, we
mhm.
just can say the spirit of truth. People are turning to the spirit of truth and being able to ask questions and find the right answer. And they look so shocked when it comes from in them. I'm not the guru. I'm not
Yeah.
here to tell people what they need to do. I will never want to repeat dogma. And so if anyone wants to join just the free mentoring group, I love to post in there. I'm kind of just free floating right now.
Good.
I don't have anything really to promote or I have angellyn.com, but it's there if you want to read about me. But most of all, I would love to meet people at the festival. I desire to see and connect with people face to face, to look in your eyes and to just hug you and tell you you are enough. You are
Mm.
worthy and you are loved. And that's what I live for. So I look forward
Mm.
to seeing you there, Cherie, as one of our
Oh.
members.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm like was getting chills when you were talking about it because like I love that. And I think that we came to a point in our quarantine that we got out of, we just shut ourselves away and we kind of got out of that interpersonal connection. And I think this now resurgence of people gathering and people coming together of like mind and for that validation and it gives people a huge boost. So yeah, listeners, I'll be there. Come hug me. Come hug Angel Lyn. But thank you. Thank you for this discussion and for who you are and your work. It's very inspiring.
Thank you so much for walking the parallel path. I'm excited to link arms together and see what we do next.
Absolutely.